Welcome back to the Lumi Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and pretty soon we'll be going back to the Unova region in the Blueberry Academy in Scarlet and Violet's DLC, the Hidden Treasures of Area Zero, or the Hidden Treasure, it's singular, of Area Zero, Part 2, the Indigo Disc. They really, they wanted us to take 40 minutes to say that DLC title, didn't they? But anyways, we're going to the Blueberry Academy, and the Blueberry Academy is really interesting because it is a school in the middle of the ocean, and under it is a giant nature park with artificial environments. This thing exists under the ocean, but has artificial environments. We've seen that there are these rocky mountains, there's these snowy mountains and like icy waters. We see there's a tropical area with beaches and tropical waters, and we see there's a desert or savanna or something, all kinds of things, all artificial, and that is really cool. But it also might tell us something about Blueberry Academy and what exactly is going on here with the terrarium. I believe that the terrarium may be a conservation center for Pokemon. They're specifically trying to take in a lot of endangered and rare Pokemon and, make an environment where they can exist and breed and thus make more of them, right? We see a lot of examples of rare Pokemon in Blueberry Academy just already. Like, we see that Bastiodon and Rampardos will be a part of the terrarium's dex. So these are fossil Pokemon that have gone extinct. We see Lapras, which is a Pokemon that, while it's grown in numbers, at one point was endangered. So perhaps they are behind the reason that Lapras is so high in numbers now. You also have Pokemon like Beldum, who, is pretty rare. You have Minior, who is a Pokemon that's only from space. That one is leaked from the data mine, so sorry, guys. But yeah, we will be discussing some data mine Dexmons here. We also have Alolan forms. We've seen that Alolan form Pokemon exist here. And those Pokemon, while they are common in Alola, they're rare in the wide world, right? Because they're only found in Alola, which is a relatively small region in the middle of the ocean. So these Pokemon are rare in the Pokemon world. Now, I know in Pokemon Snap you can find Alolan forms, but we're going to assume those games aren't canon because you can also find the Cantonian forms of some of the Alolan forms you can find. And so I just, that kind of idea of Pokemon existing outside of their regional variant region, like Alolan Sandslash existing outside of Alola in a non-artificial environment, that, hasn't been established yet in game, so we're going to throw that out the window. But the point is that there's a lot of rare Pokemon here in the terrarium, and I imagine that it's because, again, they are conserving these Pokemon. This is a space where these Pokemon can be bred and grow in numbers, and eventually maybe even have some of them be reintroduced into the environment. In fact, on the note of the data mine dex, we do also see that Kleavor is going to be a part of the terrarium or Blueberry Academy Pokedex, which implies that Kleavor can also be found here, and the conditions to evolve Scyther into Kleavor can be found here. And Kleavor is supposed to be a Pokemon that is long extinct. So again, another example of a Pokemon they have kind of managed to bring back. I think that's the whole mission of this place, is to bring back extinct Pokemon like Bastiodon or Kleavor, but also, keep the numbers up of rare Pokemon like Lapras or the Alolan forms. And this reminds me of another place we've actually seen in the Pokemon world before. In fact, this place was also an artificial island, and that is the Aether Paradise. The Aether Paradise is an artificial island found in the Alola region, and it also is a conservation center for Pokemon, and they heal Pokemon, nurse them back, and also, take care of rare Pokemon so that, they don't die out completely. Interestingly enough, we do have some dialogue from Annabelle in the English versions of the game, so not in the Japanese versions, but only in the English versions. Annabelle actually refers to the Aether Foundation as the Alolan branch of the Aether Foundation. This is huge because this implies Alolan branch, that there are other branches. So perhaps the Blueberry Academy is actually run by a corporation, or perhaps founded by a corporation, or funded or sponsored by a corporation that is another branch of the Aether Foundation. It is the Unovan branch of the Aether Foundation. We do also see that white uniforms are very prominent here at the Blueberry Academy, just as they were over in the Aether Foundation, and this would also easily explain why we've seen a bunch of Alolan forms in the terrarium, but not Pokemon from Galar or Paldea. Like, we're not seeing Galarian forms or Paldean forms or Hisuian forms. We're seeing Alolan forms because it would be very easy to get access from this. They just ask their sister branch in the Alola region to get a hold of these Pokemon for them. This could then also be broadened out to, you know, explain other conservation centers we've seen in the Pokemon world. We have the Safari Zones from the Kanto and Johto regions, as well as the Hoenn region. We also have the Sinnoh Great Marsh. All of these are conservation centers. Perhaps, maybe they are also branches of the Aether Foundation, or were set up by the Aether Foundation. Specifically, when you look at the Johto region Safari Zone, which was only seen in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, actually has artificial environments, much like the ones we see in the Blueberry Academy. By the way, if this is all sounding familiar, that's because I actually touched on this in a video I did with Birdkeeper Toby a while back, so check that out. But back to this theory, the point is that, you know, maybe at least the Johtonian Safari Zone is funded or sponsored or created by or a part of a Johtonian branch of the Aether Foundation. And given that the Safari Zone warden there, I'm pretty sure is the same warden as the Kanto Safari Zone, that would also imply that, you know, that one as well was a Cantonian branch of the Aether Foundation. You then could expand that to, you know, the POW Park, the Go Park, maybe even the Romanus Park, but I doubt so much that one because there's legendary Pokemon involved, and then there's the question of, well, if Lusamine had access to that. We're not going to open that can of worms today, but I imagine that these are all possible candidates for other things that were set up by the Aether Foundation, or at least done with the research introduced by the Aether Foundation. But back to Blueberry Academy, another rare type of Pokemon that is found in the terrarium are starter Pokemon. We know that these starter Pokemon, and no, I will not call them first partner Pokemon because that's stupid, they're starters. The starter Pokemon will be catchable in the terrarium. Now, this is at least for gens 1 through 8. We may not be able to find Wild Fuecoco, Sprigatito, or Quaxley here in the Blueberry Academy, but we can at least find Bulbasaur all the way through Sobble. So that's neat. We'll be able to find these Pokemon in the terrarium, and again, they are also Pokemon that are pretty rare. You don't find a lot of these starter Pokemon. In fact, there's actually been this long-running theory in the Pokemon world that starter Pokemon could be extinct, or going extinct rather, or very endangered, because, you know, again, they are so small in number. Usually when you get them, it is as a gift, and usually that gift is by a professor, you know, or someone acting on behalf of a professor. You know, it's someone who is researching and studying these Pokemon. You're not just getting them from, you know, youngster Joey on Route 1, right? So this would potentially add to that theory if the Blueberry Academy is indeed a conservation center for Pokemon. The fact that they've got all these starters here could be proof that, yeah, these starters are endangered, but the Blueberry Academy is working on, you know, growing them in numbers. I think this is maybe even why professors give out these Pokemon to trainers, right? They know that these trainers are going to raise these Pokemon into, you know, stronger Pokemon, and thus they'll be able to survive. It's better than sitting around a lab. Also, a lot of trainers breed their Pokemon, so you're doing that job for them too. But the point is that the Blueberry Academy is also focused on this mission. And perhaps, maybe even, they are working alongside professors, at least in the Unova region, because the Blueberry Academy is a part of Unova. We have them working alongside professors to, you know, make sure there's always readily available starter Pokemon if needed. You know, that would at least explain how Professor Juniper is getting her Snivy, Tepig, and Oshawott. Well, because the Blueberry Academy, they've been breeding them for a while now. If I were to tie this into the story of the Indigo Disc, perhaps this is maybe even how we'll encounter Terapagos. Someone found a very rare Pokemon, this normal form of Terapagos, and went, well, I've never seen this Pokemon before, so perhaps we'll study it here over at the Blueberry Academy. And they have it raised there, and, you know, maybe we'll encounter it in the terrarium, or maybe even just at Blueberry Academy. But perhaps this Pokemon was taken in here for conservation purposes. Now, we don't know that Terrapagos is going to appear at the Blueberry Academy. It could appear when we go back to Area 0 in the Indigo Disc story. But, you know, just playing with the idea. The nice thing is, again, we now know the release date, December 14th, so we don't have too much longer before we get our answers on this question around Terrapagos and what the Blueberry Academy's for. So be sure to let me know what you think of this, and how excited are you for the Indigo Disc, because I am stoked. Let me know all that in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications, and until next time, I will see all of you later.